All right.
That was a little.
Now we gotta wait. We gotta let people get here. I realize that ran into a glitch doing the live one from the original link. So let me give people a minute to figure this out.
Is that got a crack?
This?
Yeah.
It is.
All right, you guys.
A seam that opened. Glue
So we're live. We got 9 people. We can start doing stuff.
seam.
Thanks for being patient. For some reason, the scheduled stream wasn't good enough. So in the future, I learned a big lesson. I'm simply going to go ahead and do an unlisted video at the last minute and send out that link to everybody so we don't run into this issue again. If you guys could just give a couple of minutes for everyone to figure out what's going on, I might have to bounce back and forth a minute giving them the link. But we're going to jump into this. Thanks for your patience. We'll get to it as soon as we can. It's really a shame here that this is happening, but sometimes that's the way it goes with technology. So maybe we could just play a little bit for the people while everybody's filing in. Just play something totally random.
Totally.
Unrelated to the songs we're going to do today.
Just do like a Dust My Broom thing, Val.
Okay.
It's like a shuffle.
Yeah.
You guys play a little bit while I stare at this for a minute and get some people on board.
Mistreat me all the time. I got a mean mistreating mom. Mistreat me all the time. I try to tell her how much I love her. She just won't pay me no mind. Don't you remember, baby, when I knocked upon your door? Don't you remember, baby, when I knocked upon your door? And you had the nerve to tell me, ooh, you didn't want Bobby's love no more.
Play it again, man. I thought you guys were going to keep going.
Huh?
You got one more? Guys, we're just doing this until we can get folks a chance to catch up to the new link.
Sleeping by yourself when the one you love loving someone else, ain't it long? Sleeping by yourself when the one that you love loving someone else. Good. Well, one of these mornings, it won't be long. I'm gonna wake up, baby. Down the road I'm going. One of these mornings, ooh, it won't be long. I'm gonna wake up, baby. Down the road I'm going. Me mistreated mama, she mistreats me all the time. I got a mean mistreated mama, mistreats me all the time. I try to tell her how much I love her. The little girl won't pay me no mind.
You guys. I think maybe it'd be cool to talk about some of what just happened, even though it's not in our song list. And actually, we're running quite behind at this point. But I had to send out a new email list, a new email to everyone just to get the new link to this class because a lot of folks don't follow the chat. So that's what I was doing. It was a mess. How about it? Mr. Bob Pellegrino, Nick Clark here, and we're going to talk about playing behind country blues. Basically, we've got these 3 songs. You Gotta Move is the first one we're going to play. Why don't we actually jump into that? And I think we can come back around to talking about some of the sweet stuff that Nick was doing that's going to relate to what we're going to be getting into anyway, because there was a lot of good, juicy sort of harmonica. How's the audio before we get started? Any issues with the audio? You guys good? I'm assuming it's okay. Let's see if anybody's screaming. All right, fine. Okay, good. Well, they're going to jump right into it. So I thought we'd play a couple verses of this song. This is the Fred McDowell song?
Yeah.
So we're doing Fred McDowell, and what we'll do is just play behind. And yeah, you're laughing at me?
No.
So why don't you start it off, do 2 verses, I'll play a little bit behind, and then you take one and play a little bit behind, we'll talk about it. A harmonica.
You got to move. You got to move. You got to move, child. You got to move. When the Lord is ready, you got to move. You may be high, you may be low, you may be rich, you may be poor, but when the Lord He gets ready, you got to move. Nice.
All right, let's talk about what's going on there. I really did a lot of similar things, but maybe a few different textural things. I think the big discussion today, maybe you can take some of this and talk about it, is just how to play with the music and not interfere or take away from the song itself. This is a big part of it, so make sure that mic can pick you up. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what you were doing. Maybe you can share some of the techniques you were using.
So with playing in a duo context, like you're trying to make 2 people sound big, but without with still being respectful to the other person you're with. And with a song like that, it's kind of a little more open, a little more free. There's a lot of ringing with the slide as he's singing.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just trying to add to that atmosphere. So kind of going underneath his vocals as he's singing, kind of sound like, with songs like this, I kind of think a little more with images. So it's like I'm kind of like, when he's playing something, kind of like using like a trumpet beat with my hands to get like a big rolling thunder sound underneath,
Right.
just to add to the atmosphere of the lyrics, and kind of staying on that side, just kind of like having big chordal kind of things, and then when the chorus comes in, kind of join in whenever I think it's going to be the most dramatic.
Yeah.
As far as playing the melody line with him.
So that's, I hear a lot of dirty notes, a lot of the use of 2 adjacent holes.
Yeah, slurring it up.
3/4 draw, when that 3 is just bent a little bit around the half step, and then the 4 and 5 draw, where you can get these just beautiful, like Nick's saying, adding sound, adding texture behind it and filling it up. What were some of the other things we did? I noticed that I was using in between, like when he was singing a vocal line, as soon as the vocal line was there, I was taking my dynamic range and coming down really far, really pretty low, and then consciously raising it up as he's coming out of the vocals. Like if you sing just part of a line right now.
You got to move. You got to move.
Kind of filling in the in-between, but really kind of like being as subtle as you can, yet intentional with when you raise that.
Yeah, so you're present throughout the whole thing, but it's adding and then coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, and
it pop in between.
we did warbles. I know I threw in a warble. I don't know if you did. Some octaves, anything that you can sustain, which is a lot of this is going to come up today. Maybe we could talk about the points where we're accenting some of that
The melody line.
The melody line itself is where I'm drawing. So when I first started playing, I'm thinking, grab a little piece of the melody or a portion of the ending of each line. Dun, 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 dun. I ended on the 4. I just held the 4 instead of playing the whole. Instead of doing that, I just went to the 4. So that would sound like this. Maybe we could demo where that comes in. Just start it from the first verse. Let's just show them how that
You got to move. You got to move.
Just waiting.
You got.
Right, not you, them. Yeah, but that's it. That's the idea with that. So there's not much you need to do. The key is coming in and out carefully so you don't. You don't mind people playing over your vocals, you were telling us earlier, but as long as it's done well.
With the vocal, as long as they're sympathetic to the song and the vocal, and that's it.
Okay, I think that a lot of great players do that. They play behind. Maybe you wouldn't mind playing while I check out one more thing. The actual line with him while he's singing. So,
Yeah.
or going into the solo. For me, a strategy for this song, we were all talking about this, is absolutely playing just the whole melody line.
Yeah.
You've done it. You were doing it earlier, playing it while he was singing.
Yeah, in certain spots, just to add to the lyrics.
Why don't you guys do it one last time, playing a verse where you do what you did, and then let him take a solo, and then see what else is coming out besides the melody line. Just see what naturally comes out. And we can kind of talk about that for a moment.
You see that woman out on the street. You see the policeman on the beat. But when the Lord, he gets ready, you got to move.
Beautiful, man. I caught you playing. The biggest standout was when you played the riff between the melody line.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people do that. In fact, instead of us getting caught up in saying, let's teach you the exact line, maybe we will teach you some of it. I'm happy to tab that out and send it in an email to everybody. We spend time really just organically discussing what's working. But like you play that. Can you do an example of that without him?
I don't remember when
you did one of these kind of. You know, and that's just a matter of trying to find the timing. They have a simple little riff in there in between the melody line itself, where the rest in the melody is where you can grab, like Nick did, a little piece of this. So we're looking at the big picture here. I think that's what's most important when we talk about this stuff is don't get caught up thinking about, well, he said do this, I'm going to do this exact thing. These are just general concepts for you guys to use when you approach it because they work in so many of the songs we're going to cover. Does anybody have a question about what we've done so far? A little mini Q&A so that if there's something big, we can answer for you before we get too far along. Look at me. What if this was it? All right. No? Let me just check one thing right here while we're doing that. I know. It's the ADD. All right. So, guys, should we move to another song? Let's do it.
Yeah, so with that, well, because he's got tunes, but like with songs like that, kind of, you should definitely have this kind of outlook with every song, but definitely when you're in a duo sense, because like only you and another person, you got to think about what's gonna have the most effect for the song.
Yeah.
There's a I don't know if it's necessarily like a saying, but I've heard it a bunch where it's just like everyone, if you're in a band or in a duo, everyone that's playing music should be thinking like a producer.
Bingo.
When you're not thinking in terms of, what's going to make me look good, or necessarily what's going to make the guitar player look good. It's just like what's going to create a moment for everybody to latch on to.
I'm always trying to get outside of my own musical head space when I'm playing and try to hear what I'm sounding like with, maybe that sounds really obvious, but to hear what you sound like in the moment. Step outside of your head and try to really actively listen to, for example, what the guitar is doing versus focusing on the notes you're playing. And that draws me into playing what I'm supposed to be playing in that moment. Let's teach you this line. We got the time. You play the line. Let's just play the da-da-da-da, and then I'm going to call it out. A harmonica, 2 draw, 3 draw, half step bend, 4 blow, 4 bend lifted to the 4 draw. So that's 4 draw twice to 2 draw to 3 draw half step bend, right?
Yep. I kind of release it all the way.
Right. So he ends up the vibrato on the half step bend right there. On the 4 draw 4 times to a 4 blow. 4 draw to 3 draw, half to full to 2. Right? 1 draw to 2 full step bend to 2 draw. And that's him really pegging a full to a half again, where he lifts it around the half step. 3 draw, half step bend, 2 draw, 2 full step bend to 1 draw. 2 draw, full step bend, 2 draw, 2 draw, full step bend, 2 draw. Try to play along a little bit. And obviously this is being recorded so you can come back and practice the line there with us. Let's jump on to the next tune. We can always circle back if there's time. So let's jump into, where shall we go, gents?
Let's do the John Hurt thing.
There you go. So this one's in the key of C. I'm probably going to mess around with a low F harmonica. What do you have?
I have a high F and a C.
So he might go to first position, maybe? Would you? Yeah?
Possibly.
I'm very interested in hearing some of that. So why don't you just take it away and play a little bit, and then we can kind of talk about what's happening?
Sure.
Sing a little bit for us and bring us in.
Glory, glory, hallelujah. Since I laid my burden down. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Since I laid my burden down. No more sickness, no more sorrow since I laid my burden down. No more sickness, no more sorrow since I laid my burden down. Since I laid my burden down, burden down.
All right, that's great. So Nick had first and second position going on. First position on a C harmonica, second position on a regular F, so the higher F. Why don't you talk about which licks you did and which ideas lived in first position versus second? Start with whichever you want.
Yeah.
And talk about some of what was working. There's some cool chordal chucking going on. This is a real common approach that anybody should be mastering for playing country blues. This little, tell them about it.
So with the chucking, you're just basically doing what like a mandolin player or a fiddle player would be doing, which is just hitting the whatever chord you're on, the root note, on the 2 and 4. And cool thing with that is like, so the bad thing about it is that it kind of becomes like a crutch for solo duo. I mean, for duo stuff. Every song that kind of has more of an upbeat tempo, you can find yourself kind of hitting the 2 and 4, which is okay. There's some things though with it that can help because it's all chordal. Because I was mainly doing the chucking.
Can you teach us a little bit of that before you get too deep into it?
Yeah.
Show us how you're doing it.
It's on my F harp. I'm just taking the C chord and the F chord, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4, starting on the draw to get the 1 chord, and then I'm just blowing out to get the 4 chord. But I'm adding different rhythms, and that's the thing you can work on is at some you can just do kind of just straight, and you're just kind of going.
He's using his tongue,
just kind of like slide, just kind of sucking it to get a little chop, kind
so
of like
it's like coming from the roof of your mouth.
Yeah. More like through my teeth.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and it's to add kind of like a snare hit.
Yeah, it's different from how I do it, which is cool.
And then there's different. And then if you kind of think of like a drummer, so you're not just playing. You can add like a downbeat or an upbeat, and kind of, for me, like as he was playing it, I kind of felt like I was adding more of like a reggae kind of rhythm to it, because I'm. Want to play that? Yeah.
So double timing the chord. Da, da.
Just kind of adds more of a bounce.
Yeah. What's interesting is like sometimes there was a single chord, sometimes you doubled up, sometimes you were using. Talk about the roll. This is all second position still. So on the F harp, you did a tongue roll thing on a chord. You know what I'm talking about? People are gonna ask about that. So, how do you explain that?
So it's just like you're rolling your R, basically.
And what spot were you in?
Just hitting like a chord.
Sounds like an octave almost.
No, it isn't. It is an octave. It's
1/4 maybe.
1/4, or if I'm on like the 1 chord, 36.
How you rolling that? if tip of your tongue is covering the holes.
You're starting on a chord.
Now I got to get into this.
It's like when you listen to like that pre-war. I'm not a pre-war guy. I love listening to that style of harmonica.
I heard Joe Falisco stuff coming out in the first.
Yeah,
position.
but that's just like it's faux. I'm not really like
right.
mastered in that. But there's certain sounds that you can get. So I'm starting to get that kind of roll into the chord. I'm starting on like 3, 4, 5, and 6 on a blow.
Okay.
And starting the roll on that chord.
And then landing on the octave. So he resolves on the 3/6 blow, but begins on that sort of that uglier, whatever you want to call it, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 4, 5, 6 area.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then it works better on the first position on 1, 3, 4. Yeah, on 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4, because it's already a chord. It's already a C chord.
Right. So I would like to give you guys an opportunity to hear just what he did in first. Can you only stick to first? Bob, maybe play a little bit, because
Sure.
it's going to help people that went, well, I can't tell when he's in first or second. This is some of the ideas that he's doing in first position. So we'll just play through a couple.
Yeah.
Just to let him play. Cool. So I'm hearing this tongue trill, right? Up top.
Yeah.
As part of that. And I heard you play the melody. A lot of the melody lines starting to come out.
Yeah, just
Pieces of that.
that's the thing with first position, kind of playing like that pre-war stuff. You're basically like an accordion player. So, and I don't know where all the chords lay out, so I'm just kind of guessing. I know where the 1 is, because any blow note is going to sound like a C chord.
Right.
And other than that, I'm just kind of messing around, seeing what works and what doesn't.
Well, it's working all right.
Yeah.
So you did a nice 4 blow, 4 draw, 5 blow, 5 draw, real major scale feel right up for part of the melody, entering into part of like the melody line. I heard that. Almost like the beginning of like an O Susanna was the same notes he played. To get to that top, that 6 blow. What was that line? You went,
or something like that.
It wasn't exactly O Susanna, but it was moving.
It's all in that 4 to 7, that C major scale.
C major. All right.
With you though, with what you were playing with that low F.
Yeah.
I would, personally, when I'm playing in a duos gig and, there's a crowd there, I'm not necessarily going to go for like the geeky first position thing. And also a high tuned F can be very abrasive.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. So what is your take on that?
If you didn't have a low F, I'd probably use a low F, just because it has that bottom end, and you can be, again, a little more, you're thinking more of like coloring and texturing. If you're playing first position, you gotta bring that pre-war thing. Not necessarily, but like with that song, first position kind of calls for that.
Yeah, it does.
Second position on a regular F sounds cool, but I feel like you got to be way more aware of the singer if you're going to play a higher tuned harmonica.
So I have a take on that. I totally agree with what Nick's saying, and I think that I always start off in a duo setting, which I'm doing a lot of, with Moses Walker. I'm starting off on that low F and C 90% of the time, probably most of the time actually. And then, and that's great for, backing somebody up, playing some fills. I often will then take a solo. Moses tends to give me multiple solos. I often then switch to the high F. And there's two reasons I do like to use the high F. One is people tend to hear it. They pay attention more to a higher key. It resonates with the average person. Whereas there's so much more nuance and it's quieter in those low keys. You have to really be listening. I like the way the high F breaks it up, and I just play it for the solos, not when I'm backing him up, and I do it off mic. I make sure I'm a good, at least 6 inches or more off the mic or looking up a little bit, because it's like Nick said, that can be really kind of like piercing.
Yeah.
But I like to mix it.
Totally. Yeah.
But those are great first position ideas. Let me see if any questions have rolled up here. Regular tuning on the guitar. That was probably the last song that he asked that. Was that true?
First song was tuned to E.
Open E.
Second song is just regular tuning.
Okay. Y'all catch that. First position, type of country blues. Yep. It is a sweet spot. Tab description's way too fast. I can go back and send you guys some tabs in email. This is being recorded too, so you can always go back. Harmonica Blues compilation. Yep. All right, good. So let's keep moving along. We can always circle back. That's what's cool about this. So we got one more song we want to play around with. Is there anything you wanted to add to the last tune?
Maybe play a solo each.
Sure. You want to just take one round and do a solo? Yep.
Yeah.
I'll do it on this low F. That's all I got in front of me, and you got whatever you want. What are you going to use so they know?
Probably a high F.
So he's just going to stick with the regular F. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
I'm not sure how I described like what I'm doing exactly in the solo, but I can say that there's pieces of the melody coming out. Certainly not trying to play exactly the melody. I like just hanging on. There's something about playing at least portions of this solo where you're just hanging somewhere.
Especially on that harmonica. Those lower tune harmonicas for me, there's a lot more. The simpler stuff, the better. Like the droning, having just a big presence on.
What do you mean by droning? So that anybody that's wondering what you mean.
So you're taking like the 3 and 4.
Just holding something and stretching those bends.
Yeah, just just like padding. Just you're adding this kind of soundscape to it.
Right.
You're not like playing a solo. Like my thing, I felt was more like a dancing around solo.
So I call that like texture-based soloing.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. So he's strumming that, and I'm just going. You could just held that forever over all the chord changes. So yeah, good stuff. What else would you say about what you did? Anything specific? There was some cool ideas that came out.
Yeah, I think that like it just shows like when you have a lower tune harmonica, like these lower drony notes, and then when you switch to the higher key harmonica, you can really
be more melodic.
Yeah, and have a presence that's a little, it's taking the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who would you say would be some good influences? Anybody come to mind for approaching this kind of song? Harmonica-wise, players that might.
Well, there's like the traditional country blues dudes like Sonny Terry, D. Ford Bailey, Phil Wiggins, Forest City Joe, Peg Leg Sam. That would be great.
Peg Leg is good.
But also there's one of my favorite dudes, a big hero of mine is a guy named Ray Bonneville. And he plays guitar and rack harmonica.
Right.
And most of the time he is playing a lower tune harmonica and he's using more of these long drony notes to just add to the atmosphere. It's not necessarily like impressive as in like, you know, like a killer solo, but it just adds to the mood of the song.
Yeah. It's amazing we forget. I think people are busy trying to create solos based on riffs. This instrument is a chordal instrument. It's a beautiful instrument for creating all that texture, all that color, but you have to think to use it. And a lot of what's coming up today is those chordal stuff, chordal embellishments, holding these even 5/6, 5/4. You can get kind of dirty notes up top, and it's very organ-like, or however you want to think of it. It doesn't sound. You're not trying to then think just like a traditional blues harp player. So that's a lot of what happens in this. Anything else? Let's see. Otherwise, we can jump to the next one. Anybody got anything? Are you playing the major pentatonic scale?
Yeah, for the most part. Maybe little moments of, where that's going into the minor pentatonic. But other than that, on the prettier side of things.
When chucking, what did you do on the 5 chord?
Same thing, but using like the octave. And it's just, it's kind of, I'm kind of adding the tongue slap and the rhythm that's coming from just how I'm using my air.
So 1/4 draw is the lick that he's using on that to get that, and pulsing it, in time, syncopating that little rhythm there, just getting it to fit the way he wanted. And you're really good at using that syncopation and dynamic range together, which is something that maybe we can talk about at the end a little bit more in depth. Cool. Let's jump into Love in Vain. This is in the key of G. I have a C harp. What are you doing, Nick?
I have a C and a G.
Okay. Should we just play a little bit with it and let you sing, Bob?
Well, I followed her to the station with a suitcase in her hand. Well, I followed her to the station with a suitcase in her hand. Well, it's hard to tell, and all your love's in vain, all my love's in vain. The train pulled into the station. I looked her in the eye. Oh, when the train pulled into the station, I looked her in the eye. I was lonesome, I felt so lonesome. I could not help but cry. All my love's in vain. left the station. Two lights on behind. Well, the train left the station. Two lights on behind. Well, the blue light was my blue, and the red light was my mind. All my love, baby.
So before we forget, Nick started off comping he did everything in first position. Right? Yeah. So everything was in first. It started off the comping too in first, and the solo in first. It was cool. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, I like when the song started, it wasn't intentional, but we laid out during the first couple of measures while he was singing, which is so important. Like, don't forget that. Like,
it's an option.
Yeah, to lay out, and then it like adds to that momentum of when you got to pick your spot because you don't want to come in an odd spot. I've noticed that there is odd spots to come in.
Yes.
Because I've played, I'm just like, it feels like I'm intruding.
Almost, and also there's odd spots like when I handed you the tail end of like,
yeah.
Oh, you want me to finish your riff?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's almost like sometimes you can wait for it. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and then it adds again. It just adds to the moment, adds to the vibe of the song, and with first position on this, it's for me. I'm not doing any overblowing on this, and I'm just playing kind of just this chordal stuff again. Kind of thinking like Sonny Boy Williamson number 2, kind of that cross my heart, hope to cross my heart stuff.
Let me help give some information here. So he's on the G harp. 1/4 below is his accent that he's using. So that's an octave. If you're not sure how to do that, tune back another day. But yeah, maybe we can get into a tiny bit of that. And then that little riff you did, do that again. That little. That's moving from half to full step on the 3, and the second note right there. That full step bend on the 2 to 2 blow to 1 blow. And it's so cool about first is when you did that, I was like, oh yeah. I was like, he's gonna play first on this, huh? And then as soon as you started playing, I'm like, well, sure, it sounds great. Especially the bottom end of first.
Yeah.
There's something about the 3 draw that people are staying away from when they're working this first position. It's just like a little phrase, a little vocal line you're essentially playing. These little, it's something so simple, but it sounds so different. I like the fact that tonally you get this juicy sound out of the G that you just don't get from what I was doing on the C in cross harp.
Yeah.
So that was a good option.
Yeah, and then when it comes time for the solo, then you can, on that higher end, it just adds. It's just like a big, like, wow,
Yeah.
It adds this big, big pop when the solo comes up.
So a lot of what's going on in the first position, if you're new to playing first position blues, where you take, in this case, a G harmonica and playing the key of G, 98% of what you are focused on is blow notes and bent notes. You can bring in the draw notes for sure, but they're more passing notes in that sense. And you really get all the crux of your cross harp riffs by playing blow and blow bend riffs. So what was... it's all right there in blow and blow bend.
Because in first position, you can't play a full blues scale from 1 to 6 without overblowing. You can from 7 to 10.
So just blow and blow bends.
Yeah, so it's 7 blow, 8 blow bend, 9 draw, 9 blow bend to 9 blow, then 10 bend, full bend on the 10 to 10 blow.
I never used this. I'm gonna be working on that. It's
That's
obvious as that
interesting.
sounds. That's something I'm not really using, taking advantage of it in that fashion. So it's kind of. I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, and then other than that, I mean, from 7 down to 4, it's like you have to overblow 3 times to get the full blues scale, and you almost from 4 to 1 you have the blues scale, except you're missing the second to last or the second note, which is coming down from 4 blow. Right there, it should be 1 overblow, but it's hard to do on a especially on a lower tune harmonic.
Right.
And just 1 overblow is hard to do in general.
Yeah.
So what you do is you go to 2 blow, which is part of the major scale,
Right.
and you go.
So that's 4 blow, 3 draw half step bend.
Yep.
2 draw. It's really 2 draw half step to then full, something like that, where you're playing around a little bend and then full stepping it, and then 2 blow and 1 blow.
So everything is in the blues scale except for the 2 blow.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I move around in first too. And as far as what I was doing, behind Bob and Cross Harp, there's a lot of opportunity to just focus on this song. Maybe we can just play through for a moment.
What I like what you did during his verse, that verse was the followed her to the train station.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, it sounds hokey, but like
I do that a lot. I like to use that.
For solo duo stuff, like adding a little bit of like kind of like bringing sounds that kind of
Connect to the
the lyrics.
Yeah.
It definitely it sounds hokey,
and it was intentional.
Yeah.
It definitely was. It lets the audience know if they're listening, then lets them know that you're listening as intimately.
It's a very subtle form of storytelling.
Yeah.
To add sound effects to the lyrics.
Yeah, I think like the telephone ringing.
Yeah.
But I think what I was doing a lot was just trying to focus on filling everything around his vocals. And when I did play on top, which I did a couple things while he sang, it wasn't on top. It was just underneath his vocal line. I just dynamically took my range about in half. The volume just kind of drops in half. So if you want to sing the last verse out, and I can just talk a little bit about what I'm doing as you're doing it.
Where the train left the station.
2-3 draw.
2 lights on behind. Where the train left the station. 2 lights on behind.
I'm just focused on these fills right here. That's it.
Well, the blue light was my blue. The red light was my mind. All my love's
Perfect. Let me see if there's any questions that have come up, because it's easier to answer the questions for the songs in the moment. Okay. Are you playing the minute we did that? Someone did a little singing us. Great how you play with volume, Ronnie. Well, thanks. Yeah, and the dynamic range is huge in a duo, but anytime, but especially if you're in a duo setting and you're not thinking about your own range, your dynamic range, it's huge. Using a microphone, I know texture gets more difficult to play. So So maybe we'll get back into that. Nice to see some of using a microphone. Just keep in mind, we don't have one set up today. Maybe the next time we do part 2 for this class, which we hope to do. The biggest thing for me with a microphone, working with a microphone, is you absolutely want to give yourself, I want to give myself a little bit of space. I do approximately, 3 finger lengths away at least. And for high notes or blow bending and all that, I'm looking up or off.
Yeah.
Which just, so it's not so piercing.
It's always easier to move into the mic
than having to pull away, or having it feed back, or just be louder than you expected, which jolts you. You're like, oops. So somebody asked, how does Nick get some of those high notes so clean? You want to talk about your technique for getting...
On the blow bends?
I think they just mean on the high end in general, which included in most of what we're doing, a lot of blow bending and just playing up there a lot.
Well, so for the Mississippi John Hurt song, the one in C, I was tongue blocking and to do octaves and kind of doing tongue blocking while I do the blow bends. But for this song, I was just puckering and doing the blow bends, which is how I usually do it. I don't usually tongue block when I'm doing blow bends. I think that's a very common thing.
And what about your wind? You do use a lot of dynamic range on that side of the harp. So talk about maybe how much air you're able to put through before you kind of goes to hell.
Yeah, so it is a little bit more air than like draws. Draws you can finesse really low with not as much air.
Low volume.
Yeah. With this, you can be subtle. So it's not as abrasive. And it's just working those notes and trying to, I think a lot of people think with blow bends or in bending in general, like when you first learn to bend, you feel like you have to use all this air to like bring this reed down. And then over time you realize it's your placement of your embouchure, and the control over your diaphragm. Like I don't need a whole lot of air to, bend a note. And it's really just controlling of my diaphragm and how much air I'm using. Yeah. That helps with controlling these blow bends. And it's just going with these blow bends slowly, just starting on a normal blow and just slowly pushing it down.
What you're describing makes me think of like if you were to hold a candle up in front of you, but you have to blow out in pucker mode and not blow out the flame. That's about, for me, a sweet spot. About the candle, a foot in front of my mouth, I'm blowing, but I wouldn't be able to blow the candle out if I'm blowing properly. For me, to give an analogy on the blow bends, that candle's not going, I'm not going. And the other thing is to keep your air moving.
Yeah.
It's kind of what Nick's also describing. Like when you don't stop your air, you get a fluidity. You can kind of move in the phrase. I think a lot of beginners and intermediate players are breaking it up when there's not a rest. There's not an unnecessary moment to stop breathing.
Most people are just going for the bends and they're not working them in and out so they can be fluid.
Like,
yeah, most people are like, oh, I got 9 blow bend.
So they're going like, maybe just using some quick
which
riff.
Makes sense, like most like Jimmy Reed stuff. Yeah.
Right, he's landing a lot on the bends and just
It's very like there's the note. But you listen to like there's some Jimmy Reed songs where he's like really like kind of flowing with those bends. But Mitch Kazmar, and Stevie Wonder, I think those guys on those blow bends, they're really, it's all fluid.
So, and on Boogie on Reggae Woman, Stevie Wonder actually is a good example of how he lands actually quite aggressively right on bend note. Almost all the riffing is on the bend notes if you really listen to it.
Yeah.
Bend it down. He's doing these funky riffs where it's but he's phrasing them rather than just like hitting it arbitrarily. It's part of his phrasing, his musical phrasing.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain this stuff. So maybe thinking about a strategy for taking this song, because this is a pretty popular song. I say focus a lot of your time on this, like we've been talking about today, swelling these chordal and dirty notes, the 2-3, the 4, the 3-4 draw, the 4-5 draw, bringing the bends to lift into those notes. Practicing that, and then when somebody sings a phrase, maybe just practice humming something that you hear in between, so you get a reference, a frame of reference for how long your phrase needs to be before the vocal line comes in. Or just listen to the song long enough to where you can hear that space. You know how to come out naturally right as he's coming in.
Yeah, and just to what you did a bunch, which is like, play quiet during the vocals, and then during that space, fill it up and land on a chord or something like it, and kind of
let's demo that.
Cut the volume.
You want to demo that? We
Sure.
do one more verse, have Bob sing a verse to the song, and just focus on the backup stuff.
Yeah.
By the way, all the stuff that's happening in the backup, in the background, absolutely be thinking about potentially bringing that into your solos. Those are things that you want to mix with maybe some more melodic lines when you're soloing, because it's what makes your whole story you're telling
It's
more
your momentum
complete and building your momentum. So
yeah.
Here's another example.
I'm on a C harp now.
So now he's in cross harp, C harp. Yep.
I followed her to the station with a suitcase in my hand. Well, I followed her to the station with a suitcase in my hand. Well, it's hard to tell, when all your love's in vain, all my love's in vain. The train pulled into the station. I looked her in the eye. When the train pulled into the station, I looked her in the eye. I was lonesome, I felt so lonesome. I could not help but cry. All my love in vain.
Yeah, that's a good enough example. And one thing that I hear Nick doing really well is, if you think about the fill as a curved bell graph, the dynamic range from the beginning of the fill is really quiet, of him coming out playing behind the vocals. He's been playing most of the time, but real quiet. It goes up right in the middle, and before the fill is over, the dynamic range is curving back down until it fades into the vocal line. It's like this perfect little curve from an audio perspective, I guess. That's big. This is the difference between somebody who's become a good player and a great player, in my opinion, because it's taking the music and being sensitive enough to your own playing, again, to interpret how it belongs in the song, and then adjust in that moment to say, wait a minute, this is a tender moment. I need to be way down here, or this is my moment to, like, fills. I think fills should be like, take them. The volume-wise, dynamically, they can be as loud as your solo. Just learn how to maybe bring it in and bring it back out gently. What else? Anything else come to mind?
Let
me see what time it is real quick.
That song, not really.
Okay.
It's more of just like what you said was pretty good. When you're playing kind of accompaniment during the vocal line, to not all the time. Sometimes you can do it, but not all the time. Like, don't always completely forget what you just did.
Right.
Yeah, bring it into your solo. Like, we did that for the first song, You Got to Move, where both of our solos, we were definitely dancing back and forth with that melody line. It's good to have that. And then there's other times, just completely forget it and think of it as this is your moment to make a different statement.
Right. So how do you guys work on that? That's a big question, and we may not be able to hit all of these topics in depth, but step one, start listening to a bunch of examples of this music. Nick called out some great players that are in this style. We're not even touching on playing DeFord Bailey, Sonny Terry, that style we haven't even touched on. By the way, the Global Blues Harmonica Summit coming up September 14th, we'll get into perhaps some more of that style as Joe Falisco and Eric Noden are going to be playing and breaking down their approach. This is kind of a teaser, a good taste of, hey, if you like the topics that we're talking about today, check that event out. These guys have been performing together and presenting and teaching together for a long time. They've got their format down. It's really good. So let me see if anybody has any questions. This is a good time to jump in and ask a question. Let's see. Harp Gee, I would like to hear Ronnie and Nick play at the same time, 24 bars trading solos. This is off topic, but what key is trying to understand in?
Oh, it's an E flat, and I'm using an A flat harmonica.
Nick's got a great CD. Where can they find that CD?
You can message me on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that.
NICCLARK. That's it. Bob, you have anything you want to share before we start playing again? Is there any stuff websites or any plugs? Bob Pellegrino.
I have no plugs.
These guys can I make an announcement about what you guys are doing? Am I allowed to say that?
Sure, we don't know what's going to happen.
What you were discussing. Well, maybe you'll get to hear these guys have some material already out.
Yeah.
So you can message Nick and he can help you get it. But some CDs that are great. So you want anything similar to what we're doing today on your recordings? Or is it more Chicago or?
No, we put out a record called Blue with this bass player, Curtis Hawkins, and it's all acoustic.
That's
music.
the one.
And Bob's playing that guitar, and I'm playing acoustic harmonica, and there's this upright bass. It's not online. There's only physical copies. It's Curtis's project, so it's his call. But I can I can get you copies of that if you want it. And that's about.
And you're playing guitar in a couple of songs.
Yeah.
2 songs, yeah.
Nick, do you want to play any guitar at some point today? Is there anything you want to share with them that's totally different from what we've done? You don't have to, but
no, I don't.
Left-handed? You don't want to play a left-handed guitar?
Yeah. There's nothing really. I think one of the only things that I really, kind of I noticed when I started becoming a guitar player, just how much a little dab of harmonica is needed. I'm a pretty big harmonica nerd. My record collection can rock with the best of them. I love Koi Hot Shot Love, and
that's one of my first songs that I fell in love with.
Papa Lightfoot,
his too.
Yeah, Hot Shot Love. Peg Leg Sam, all that stuff. I'm a big fan of it, but when it comes to putting out songs, I try to remember that everything has a role, and a harmonica for a song, unless you're in the right situation where you're playing a little Walter tune, or if you're in a jamming situation and you can kind of throw down with like crazy, runs and overblowing and chromatic runs and all that. Unless you're in a situation where that is allowed or called for, you're just there to layer.
Yeah. And what's so satisfying is when you guys settle into a lot of what we discussed today. To me, it's almost more satisfying to play that role than the lead. And I really enjoy playing behind and figuring out where the texture belongs and hearing things that are not only called for, they're needed. They got to be there. Without it, you're in this setting. It's too empty without you playing a decent amount. Don't worry about overplaying. It's about the sensitivity level, the dynamic range.
I did a gig with this amazing violin player named Lionel Young. You guys know.
Wow.
I played in a band setting with him, and the bass player is really, really great bass player. His name's Kim Stone. After the gig, he pulled me off to the side. He goes, "Man, your harmonica playing is really different." He goes, "It's not like a normal harmonica player. It's more like keyboard padding."
Mm-hmm.
And that was like one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten, especially because that summer leading up to that gig, I was kind of really focusing on that. Like, how do I take an idea and work with that and just kind of layer on this, kind of just add, you're more of like, you're a part of this song, but you're not necessarily, I'm trying to think of the way to put it. You're not holding it all together.
Right.
And you're just taking little musical ideas. If you're playing rhythm, kind of, you're thinking in a rhythm sense, and all of your licks and ideas come from playing in the rhythm. If you're playing more in a soundscape thing, then you're just, all these droney notes show up, and I listen to like synthesizer music, and that helps with like thinking in terms of being a layer.
So which techniques or sounds go with what you're describing? Because I have an idea, but I'd rather you share. Because the one that comes to mind for me is the side to side, the tongue warble.
Totally, that stuff. For
dynamic
sure.
range, using your
hands. That comes like,
check this out.
Just like play like just a thing in E, like a country blues thing.
Key.
E.
Nice.
It's just,
the coolest part about it is that you're grabbing ideas from like keyboard player, but you're actually, the voicing is still, you get the voicing of a harmonica. You get all this sweet, the bent note and the cry of the harmonica mixed in there. So part of what I hear you doing is just dirty notes, like we've been talking about, like playing a combination of two notes at the same time, swelling the note with volume and using your hands to open on the louder parts maybe and close on the quiet parts where it gets deeper.
And remember that you have all these different tools. Like if a song's a little more upbeat, you can use your vibrato as a rhythm. You're not, you can hit the 2 and 4 or whatever you want to do with, instead of like, getting the accents with your tongue, you use your vibrato.
You use your breath to get that syncopation.
Yeah.
That rhythm in there. Well, do you want to trade some riffs and cut my head off? Let's play a little bit. Let me make sure nothing else has come up. Are you guys tapping your foot? How do you keep such good time? Well, I definitely find that when I'm tapping my foot, or at least moving the back heel in time, it's making a huge difference. So I don't know what I've been doing. Sometimes I don't use it at all, and I just play, and it's whatever, you're feeling it. But
you're trusting the guitar player's time.
But I definitely, I guess that's what it is. That's the default. But in a good moment, I'm moving to that a little bit to some degree.
Oh yeah.
What are we going to trade on?
What key do you have? C, so just something in G.
Yeah, I guess.
G.
Yeah, maybe keep it in the same vein of what we've been doing today.
Yeah.
You want to sing a little bit, or just have us play?
Whatever you want. Same song.
Sure.
Well, I followed her to the station with a suitcase in my hand. a suitcase in my hand. Well, it's hard to tell, it's hard to tell. All your love rain, all my love rain. Where the train pulled into the station, I looked her in the eye. Oh, the train pulled into the station, I looked her in the eye. I was lonesome, I felt so lonesome, I could not help but cry. Oh, my love, baby.
Play it together. That's cool, guys.
Pretty legit.
What exactly on that sound that's your tongue warble? We've talked about that thing that he did that was really cool. That was like, I can't do it fast. So his tongue is you explain.
Yeah, it's just side to side.
So it's around 6 and 5 blow, 4 draw. Those are the areas that he's doing this. Do you find that your tongue the tip of the tongue is more in an octave position to start? Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Like if you stopped it and froze it.
Oh, it's definitely
Octave.
coming off the octave. Yeah.
That's just want to make sure. So tip of the tongue right on the comb, back and forth. This is a lot to process. I think I'm just making sure no one has any questions. I don't know how we're doing on time. I think we still got time if you have questions today. Oh, good. Joy in the chat box. You guys, I really appreciate you checking this out today. It's kind of an opportunity right now. If you have any questions related to the topics we did or anything that you just want to throw out, we're happy to answer that. In the future, doing these sessions, I learned that I may not schedule like you saw it scheduled. It'll just be you'll get the link. I'll go live and shoot the link out when I'm live so we don't run into this issue. Or maybe I'll figure it out. But All right, you guys, this has been a blast. I hope you guys have learned something. I'm just trying to make sure there's no other questions that I might have missed. Let me scan this real quick. Anything you guys want to share? Anyone have link to tabs for Lay My Burden Down? Well, Richard,
Guitar tab?
do you mean, yeah, I was going to say, do you mean guitar or harmonica? And if you mean harmonica, there's not really tabs probably out there for that. Tabs, you'd have to be specific for, like, do you want the tabs of what we played or, you know. I'm happy to follow up, though. I'm happy to take some time to send an email out of, for example, things that I went over fast. Maybe I'll just create a small document of, like, the vocal line to You Gotta Move, things like that. But, yeah, I don't see any and next time we can get into other techniques, like how to work with a microphone, how to do hand techniques is something I thought would be really cool to get into, and just sort of approach these either part 2 with some new songs and fresh approaches. Like instead of focusing on what to play during the solo or what to play in between, maybe focus on, again, these really specific techniques that we'll use in the songs. Like Bob was talking Key to the Highway. That'd be a great one to do. Teach the melody a little bit, but talk about how the hands come into play and exactly the hand technique is a big part of it. So awesome. 2 tabs for Lay Down My Burden. We had checking. What do you do on 5? We answered that. I don't think I missed anything. How would you play it differently if it was not a duo? So I'll just say this. A lot of what we did today is contextual to being in a duo. You're not going to see a lot of bands do these songs. So it's a hard question to say with these songs. As far as general playing, for myself, I can say that my role is limited. It's just more limited because there's other musicians on stage.
Yeah, the more people on stage, the less you play.
Yeah,
the less you do.
You limit what you say, which means if you got something to really add rhythmically or coloring behind, sure, bring it in. But when I hear somebody else already doing some of that, like a guitarist, I stay away from it or try not to double up on things. If I take a fill, I take it and I get in and out. When it's my time to solo, I'm soloing. So there's a lot I'm not doing is the answer. Like Nick said, you just simplify your role. That's a really good question. I'm glad I found that. How about a solo harmonica piece like Man, Trouble, Blues by Jaybird Coleman? How would the two of you approach that one? I don't know that one. I mean, I know who Jaybird Coleman is, but do you know that?
Not offhand, but anything like that pre-war stuff and that kind of that train rhythm stuff. If you're gonna go for stuff like that, for the first position stuff, you just map out where your ones. I mean, your 1 is on all the blow.
All the blow, yeah.
But look where your 4 and your 5 are. I mean, you know where your 5 is, but know where your 4 chord is in the octave. And
okay,
that's a lot of slapping. That's a lot of tongue work. All that, like.
So what's interesting is that what he's playing musically is so simple, but the technique is what's making it advanced. That's the tongue roll.
Yeah, that's all like that Jazz Gillum stuff.
Yeah.
And then for like that train stuff, Lonnie Glosson, if you guys checked him out.
Not enough.
He is, if you read that Little Walter book, it's the only guy that Little Walter in press, in written press back in the day. He was the only guy that he listed as an influence. He's this white country blues, harmonica player, and his train stuff, like his control over his dive is pretty intense. You can find that on YouTube.
Kind of like also the guy who does the talking harmonica, how advanced his technique is.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name right now, but white country guy. He's a country artist.
Learning that, it's all diaphragm with that train stuff because
and Joe's going to talk about some of this. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, but you're right. It's so much breath control, but also I learned from Joe a couple years back at Spot. There's a lot of tongue control in the train. You can do
Yeah, because you can add
or even the da-da-da-da in and out.
Yeah.
I don't do that kind of train. It's the only one I do.
So the one I do.
Do you do that with the tongue?
I do.
You don't use that one?
I do something like it where my tongue's involved. Because like the simple one is in twice, out twice. But instead of doing twice, you enunciate something with your mouth. So what I do is nucka on the in and tucka on the out. And you can just pick
all the articulations there.
Yeah, like that's a cool thing to like. That helps on the 2 and 4 stuff when you're chucking. Like all the different ways your tongue and your jaw, all of it, how you can get all these different sounds with your hands and your tongue. Kind of like picture yourself, when you're a kid and you have a fan in your room and you're like doing all that, like I am your father.
Yeah, you're talking about
and doing all that. Just do that with the harmonica,
All right, I'm gonna admit something.
all that.
I used to say this. See if you guys can decode this.
No, what is
So I'm saying, take me to your leader on the end.
Yeah.
I used to sit around and go, or take me, or you can't bring it into rhythm, but I used to sit around and say stuff. Yeah, experiment with hokey dokey tuatado, all these little articulations. Tuckatoodle, yeah.
And then like
duckadee.
It's a goofy instrument, but like you like on the if you can like sing in pitch, you can do weird stuff.
Oh yeah, this is cool. Who was it that always did that? Ah, shit. Who's that always did that? Oh, Hazmat Modine. That guy always uses that too a lot. Forget his name is escaping me right now, and I know him. But
or you can just do.
What do you got?
I got G.
No wonder. We're like over here.
Well, do the blow. Yeah, it's goofy, but it's a lot of different things to do.
I think we'll cover a different side of this whole country blues stuff when you get a taste of what Joe and Eric lay down in the next Global Blues Summit. That's going to be released soon, so you can purchase that one. But like all these unique train rhythms that Joe has and ideas for backing up a guitarist that are totally different from even what we did today. But just to wrap up one point that we didn't really talk about a lot, one of the most important ones that we threw away quickly in the beginning that was like, you don't want to do this too much, but just being able to use these chords in an articulated chucker kind of way. I usually go da 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 2 and 1. I alternate on that.
Yeah.
For a lot of just country rhythms in general.
And so that's the thing with you don't want to do it too much, or you want to like find all the different variations you have, all the different you can add a beat, take away a beat, all that. And then if you are in a context where like you're in a duo setting and then like, hey, we got a mandolin player or we got a fiddle player.
Right.
Those instruments are so sonically similar to us, and they are going to chuck on the 2 and 4. They're going to do it.
That's when you want to get away from it.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Become more melodic, or don't say anything if it's being filled up. Yeah, that's a great point. And that's just the da 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 on the inhale. 1, 2, 3. I'm saying yeah, yeah, yeah. So it fits in nicely to pretty much anything that he would play. Probably I could fit that in there. Maybe not the
Slower
love and bang, but
Yeah.
and the slow stuff. But anything that's kind of that bouncy country 2-beat feel type of. I don't know what key you're in. E? I'm an E. Yeah. Throwing a little something in between them, like. 3/4. You know, you can mix it up in there and it makes for a big difference. There was one or two other questions that popped up. Beginning, Nick was slapping the end of his harp to get a warble. How does that work? That was that really fast. Show us that really fast warble.
So it's just like so on like the 3 and 4, but you're kind of just like spazzing out with your hand.
Mine doesn't work. Yeah, and Walter Horton, you watch guys like Big Walter will do it like this.
Yeah.
He'll take it in his right hand and go like this. Kim Wilson takes it out. Yeah. That's really effective.
I feel like I have a better control of the timing if I use this.
That's is right here, you know, just getting that rhythm down. There's a little push in, but really he's getting this sideways kind of. That's really freaky. Your hand looks like a rubber glove.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Nick used to do, I don't know if you still do it, but even using a similar fashion for a vibrato on a 10.
Yeah.
Just pushing in like this, you know, pushing in with your finger. You can get this with practice.
Because
I tend to do that sometimes.
You're just sharpening that note.
So you're not really moving anything but the position of the harp when you.
It's just it's going in more. Yeah. Or you could do it with your doing the ooze.
But that's a lot of jaw stuff. If you notice, his jaw is doing that on those. Yeah. I looked around, haven't found tabs for Lay My Burden. Give us the first couple notes, and I can figure out the rest. Tabs. I'm wondering if you mean still guitar.
I'm guessing. Try the melody with the harmonic.
Okay, maybe that's obviously what he might mean there. Yep. The speed of your side-to-side tongue action come naturally, or was it learned? I'm at a snail's pace, wondering if it's continuous work will make a difference.
Yeah, I think it's just working it over time. Like, I used to feel like it wasn't fast enough, and I would sit there for hours and just, you know, the more you do it, you build up what you need. But also like a slow, like you want to, same thing with your bends, how you can go from no bend into like a half bend, you know, where you're going half step, full step, and like all the microtonal stuff in between.
Right. You
want that with your everything. You want your tongue to go slow and kind of have like a wavy thing, and then like a real fast. It's just start at a snail's pace and just move.
And ultimately, your goal, like a vibrato, is for the technique to become automatic, to become like a spasm, to become like involuntary, or I guess that's the word, so that the tongue just starts to move on its own when you ask it to do it, versus you have to mechanically move it. Similar with a vibrato, at first it's pulsing the note, then it becomes the epiglottis going, oh, you want me to open and close fast, and the epiglottis figures it out. Well, it's a similar kind of effect. I think the tongue has to learn how to just relax enough to get that on its own.
Yeah, because with everything, like when you're learning how to bend, you use all this air, and then you realize I didn't need all that air. Yes. You don't need all that tension in your tongue. That's slowing you down.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So cool. Trying to use those. Yep, we got that. Lay My Burden Down. Give us the first couple notes. Do you have anything you want to add to that? Lay My Burden Down.
It's that one in C.
Yeah.
Where's your F harp? Because I could play it with the melody, but I don't want to. Oh, I think I have a little.
Oh, the low F?
Yeah, I have it.
There you go.
So it's 1 draw, 2 blow, and then 2 draw twice. 3 draw to 3 draw half step. Back to 3 draw to 2 draw. Then repeat the 3 draw.
That's the full when he did that one. Dun, dun.
It's basically, for the most part, it's all 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right there on the 5, you're getting that 4.
5 chord. You're getting the
5 chords
4 draw.
on the 4 draw. Five blow, 4 draw, 3 draw to 3 draw, half step, and then 1 draw, 2 blow, 2 draw.
Maybe I can tap some of this out and send it to you guys. You can go back and rewind. Don't forget, you can go back and review this.
Which might help your ear.
Yeah, honestly, the best way to learn these is to struggle a little bit. Take a minute and just fight for it. Seriously, play along with what he's doing. Tabs are great. They're great when you really need them. They're better when you write them yourselves, though. That's the way that works. Cool. Any other questions? I don't want to cut anything short. I know we started late today, so I realized that, you got a couple extra tunes in, though. We got that in. So the idea here is to keep these classes fairly loose, but structured enough to where we have something to really grab onto and talk about, as we did today. If you want to use the chat box to express whether you'd like to see a part 2 to this class, we got some cool song choices we want to talk about. And maybe now that I've done this once in this format, maybe I would send out 1 or 2 pieces of tabs just for you to follow, like the basic beginning of like a melody. Like if we learn, what did we say? We're going to Key to the Highway or something like that. Maybe we'll give you a little part to follow along, but it's good to have to be in the moment. Like it really is. Struggle a little bit. Nick was saying, just repeat it. Let your ear have a minute to digest that. So let us know if you want to see that. I hope to do more of these in the future. Just, maybe not exactly 2-3 days before I announce it, but seemed to work out okay. My apologies for the delay in today. I don't know what happened, but it happened. Part 2, good. Is it okay to play along with your backing tracks and use them in in your YouTube video? You can just put, these are Ronnie Shell's backing tracks till then or something. Put maybe harmonica123.com so people know where you got that. Cool. Thank you guys so much for being here. If no one has any questions, we might bail out.
Let's give it up for Bob Pellegrino having to deal with harmonica.
Part 2, acoustic mic techniques would be great. We can do that. So we don't have a mic set up today, but we will do that. I'm paying attention to this feedback, but yeah, as far as the acoustic mic technique stuff, keep this in mind. We oh yeah, the Honer $5 guitar over there. We'll talk about the mic stuff though. You guys have a final duet, some classical Spanish guitar. Malagueña.
I end everything on.
See what I have to deal with before we started. All right, you guys. Let me see if there's anything else going on over here. All right, guys. I'm not sure I'm going to hang out for a minute here until we all have a minute to just make sure no one has any other questions. Oh, here's a question. This is actually good, guys. Check it out. Somebody's asking, do country blues relate in any way to bluegrass music? If so, what would be the similarities and differences? I know that chucking on the 2 and 4 is common in bluegrass. Nick, take it away.
Most bluegrass people, when you say let's play a blues tune, they're probably going to play something by Mississippi John Hurt. He's the big crossover for folk, bluegrass, and blues. Sonny Terry, Brown and McGee is probably going to be easy.
Right.
There's,
any songs in particular that you would reference as being the sort of like...
Yeah, like, Deep River Blues.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a
Doc Watson is the version I always.
yeah. So stuff like that. The only thing with bluegrass songs is that it's not 1-4-5. It's all It's all, for the most part, it's all cowboy chords. It's just where they place them. So there's a lot of elements that are similar. So it's not, you're not going to be completely lost or out of place. You might hit a 4 where they go to like the 6.
Right.
So just learning where those notes for the chord lay out on whatever position you're in.
So on the chording part, there's a lot of similarities for sure. The big difference I hear in a lot of bluegrass music is that a lot of it is fast,
Yeah.
and it's the fiddle parts are lightning speed. Yeah, and so you begin to think about a harp player's. For me, I'm sure I could come up with something, but I also at the same time would probably follow my face trying to match what a fiddle player would be doing. So, but there are great harmonica players that are in this bluegrass realm that do exactly that with first and other positions where they have that almost John Popper-esque type of this bellowing technique.
Well, that's just like, I mean, we learn scales. Most blues harmonica players will learn the major and minor pentatonic, stuff like that. But bluegrass, you have to practice scales. And that's where all those runs, where in the middle of a song you go.
Interval practice comes into play there. That's like a Gary Premature Cashmore does some of that.
Yeah.
Gary does that in the song, doesn't he?
Yeah, Knock Me a Kiss.
Is that riff?
Yeah. It's just
Play that.
It's just the major pentatonic scale.
That's great the way you. There's a lot of backing up and grabbing the note.
You go up, grab one, go up, grab another.
That's really.
And if you practice that, you get dexterity with your instrument. You're right there with it. And you also can throw one of these scale exercises in, because if you're like, okay, I want to end on this solo on the high end, and I want to start low, and you don't really know what to do, well, you can just do like a little scale exercise up to the higher register.
That makes sense. So
with bluegrass, that is almost mandatory.
Yeah, and if you ever go to a spa event, you will meet a couple. I think her name is Kara.
Yep.
And a couple other like more bluegrass oriented. PT Gazelle probably is crossing over now and again. Not very much in bluegrass, but a tiny bit. Even Jelly Roll might be doing some of that. Mark Graham plays fiddle on harp. He's worth checking out. Yep. Do country blues relate? We said that to bluegrass. If so, yep. Good questions today, man. I really appreciate you guys checking this out. You have no idea actually how much this means to me. So a huge thanks to Nick Clark and Bob Pellegrino. I think we're going to sign off because the questions are kind of trickling, and we kind of covered a lot of what we were hoping to cover here today. These guys are going to play out a little bit, and then we're going to say goodbye. Thank you, guys. You're almost in tune.
One day.
Oh, we're done.
Yeah.
All right. Come check out the next Global Blues Harmonica Summit. We'll be back for a part 2 eventually. Maybe we can knock that out. I don't know when. I will put out a little release about it, and we'll write up a little class description ahead of time for you, a little more thorough. Thanks, fellas. All right, we're signing off. Y'all have a great day. Right on. Thank you, Betty. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate you all who made it here live. And if you're watching this as a recording, thanks for checking this out. If for any reason you got trapped in the original link, I'm really sorry that happened. Thank you. You got it, Mike. Thanks for checking this out. Hopefully the stream, looks like the streaming connectivity and the audio went well today. That is very promising with my new equipment. Right on. All right, guys. Have a great day.